My wife was a transit worker. She worked for BC Transit for more than a decade. She was there. Maybe let me start with you guys, right? When I look at all your faces and I see all you guys, I see strength. I see a bunch of beautiful people who've been strong throughout all this. And it gives me hope, because to tell you the honest truth, most days I find it hard to get out of bed, okay? And I wish for your sake, for everyone's sake, that I could be stronger, right? And I hope maybe in the future I will be. But even coming down here today, this was so hard for me. My wife was the most beautiful person I'd ever met in my life. She really completed me. She was the yin to my yang, you know? In every way in this world that I'm weak, she was strong. And without her, I feel so weak. And I thank you all for your strength. I thank you all for being here. Right, this is important, and I appreciate this from the bottom of my heart. And I know she would appreciate this too. She worked for transit for more than a decade. She was a driver, but she was more than that. She taught their anti-bullying and anti-harassment campaign. She trained new workers. I've had a bunch of people from transit tell me how much she meant to them and how much she influenced them. And I've innocuously ran into people who used to work for transit who told me the same thing when they found out who she was, that they remembered her. She was a beautiful soul. And I honestly wish it was her here today.
She is. Yes. She is. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much. There was a point in time when she realized she was going to be mandated, that they were going to put her on unpaid leave for not taking the vaccine. She wasn't going to be willing to take it, right? She required informed consent. And I can tell you that was something they weren't willing to offer her, right? Like, I don't believe the vaccine's safe, not from everything I've seen and everything I've experienced in the past year and a half. But it's even more than that. If they believed the vaccine was safe, it was incumbent on them, if they were going to mandate it as an employer, to provide her with informed consent. It was incumbent on them to explain to her and show her how it was safe, right? To sit her down with whoever they need. And every other person who was laid off from transit, every other person who had their job taken from them, people who were loyal to that company, who put in some cases maybe decades worth of service. But that's not something they were willing to offer. They bullied her. The woman who taught their anti-bullying and harassment campaign to other workers, they bullied her. And they bullied her for 6 months. And I spent 6 months of my life working night shift where I could listen to doctors talk, listen to podcasts, listen to people, try to look for a way. Look for them to give her some sort of religious exemption or medical exemption, or to honor her perspective, to honor her beliefs, or to provide her with informed consent. And in the end, she talked to lawyers. They tried to work together in every way. They tried to find a way to work with the system. And in the end, there was no way. They were not willing to compromise on any level. They weren't willing to do testing. They weren't willing to offer her anything. And I don't personally believe the tests even work, to tell you the honest truth. But if they don't believe the tests work either, then how could they sit here and say that people have COVID and that they don't? How can they even say that it exists? Right?
Exactly.
So if the tests worked, then it was incumbent on them to offer her testing. And they wouldn't offer her that. They took everything from her. Everything she'd worked for more than a decade to achieve. Everything she'd worked more than a decade to be. It was her identity. It was a huge part of who she was, more than I even knew. And she got put on unpaid leave on November 31st. And on December 11th, she took her own life.
Oh, bro.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sorry, man.
I was working night shift. I stayed up. She went for a job interview on the 10th. I stayed up after my shift. I waited for her to get home. We had lunch together. We talked. I tried to convince her to come to bed with me because I could tell she was bummed out because the job interview, the guy didn't even show up to interview her. It was the third time that she'd been stood up for the interview that she was going to do. I went to bed, finally. I woke up, she still wasn't there. I texted her, I went back to sleep, and I wish to God that I'd known. I woke up in the middle of the night, she still wasn't there. And I knew in my heart that something was wrong. I tried to text her, I tried to look for her. As soon as it came time, her family lives in Quebec. As soon as it came time that I thought they would be up by 5 in the morning, I messaged them in Quebec. I told them, she's not here, do you know where she is? I had 1,000 different thoughts going through my head, what might be happening, I didn't know. They sent the police to do a welfare check. We went down. We went down to the parkade down below, and they found her in her car. I saw her in her car, she was dead. I had to smash the windows of the vehicle because I didn't know, I just thought she could be saved. I thought she could be resuscitated. That's my wife, that's Sandra, and that's me, that's the man I used to be. And I put that there too because I died that day as well. And I've lived alone for the last 6 or 7 months, but I'm not living. I'm not even alive. They took us both. I wish I could say more. I wish I had some message of hope. I wish I could tell you all that it's all going to be okay, or that we'll make it through, or that there won't be more casualties in the future, but I don't know any of those things. I honestly find it hard to believe. The main reason I even stick around is to look after our little cat, and in the hopes that one day I can try to help to be strong like the rest of you, that I can somehow save someone else from suffering the same fate that she suffered.
God wins. You'll be okay, son.
Thank you all. Thank you all for your compassion. Thank you all for coming today.
You're brave.
Thank you.